Eli Darnell had always liked the quiet. His farm lay on the edge of the Terran frontier, far from the noisy cities and the endless hum of machinery. Fields of golden wheat stretched toward the horizon, broken only by the small barn where Eli kept his tools and a few animals. Life was simple, and Eli liked it that way. Every morning, he would rise before the sun, feed the chickens, check on the cows, and make sure his crops were growing well. The sky was his ceiling, the soil his companion, and the wind his friend. But this evening, the quiet would change, forever. Eli was sitting on the porch, sipping the last of his tea, when a strange hum filled the air. It was low and soft at first, almost like a vibration through the ground. He frowned and leaned forward, trying to see where it came from. At first, there was nothing but the familiar stretch of fields and the distant tree line. Then, he noticed them small sparks of light moving in the sky, far off, like fireflies on the wind. But these lights moved with purpose, and they were far too large to be insects. Eli squinted. The sun was just below the horizon, painting the clouds in shades of pink and gold. But the lights didn't reflect the sunlight. They glowed on their own, pulsing softly as they drew closer. At first, he thought he might be imagining things. Farmers often had to rely on imagination to explain odd shapes in the fields or shadows in the barns. But this was different. Something deep in his chest told him that these lights were real. As the glow grew stronger, Eli's eyes widened. They weren't just lights. They were creatures. Huge creatures. Wings stretched wide, almost impossibly so, and their bodies shimmered in colors Eli had never seen. Scales glinted like polished gemstones, and long tails trailed behind them, moving in time with the wind. His heart thudded in his chest. He had heard stories of strange visitors from beyond the stars, but he had never thought he would see one. And now, they were here. The creatures circled above the fields, landing one by one with soft thuds that shook the ground gently. Their heads were long and graceful, and their eyes glowed with intelligence. Eli's first instinct was to reach for the rifle in his barn, but his hand froze halfway. These weren't wild predators. He could feel something in them, a kind of calm intelligence that made his fear melt away. A voice, or at least something like a voice, entered his mind. It was gentle, like a breeze through the trees, and Eli blinked in shock. "Humyn, we need your help." Eli's mouth went dry. He dropped the cup of tea, and it shattered on the wooden porch. What are you?" he stammered, half speaking aloud, half thinking. "We are your visitors," the voice said. "We mean no harm. Our home is dying. You can help us." Eli swallowed hard. He was a farmer. He knew how to fix problems with soil, water, and seed. But he was not a hero. He was not a savior of worlds. He was just Eli, with a small farm and a simple life. The dragons seemed to sense his hesitation. One of them stepped closer, its massive head lowering so that its glowing eyes were level with Eli's. He could see the fine ridges along its snout, the delicate way it breathed, and the faint, musical hum that came from its body. For a moment, he just stared, caught between fear and awe. "You understand us," the dragon said. "We can share knowledge. We know you can help. Please, Humyn." Eli rubbed his eyes. I don't know how I can help," he said slowly. "We are dragons," another voice answered, smoother and deeper than the first. "Not like the stories your people tell. We are alive across the stars. We can travel, we can think, and we can feel. But our planet, it suffers. The rivers dry. The forests die. We need your mind. Humyn, your way of thinking, your cleverness, your perseverance. You can help us save our home." Eli's mind raced. He had always been practical. He knew the sky, the soil, and the crops. He knew how to plan, how to repair, and how to nurture life. Could this knowledge really matter to beings from another world? Could a simple farmer make a difference on a planet far beyond the stars? And yet, something in their eyes told him that this was not a joke. This was real. He took a deep breath, letting the cool evening air fill his lungs. "All right," he said finally, his voice trembling. "I'll try. But I don't even know where to start." The dragon's scales shimmered brighter, a sign of approval. One of them stepped back and lowered its wings, creating a glowing path across the field. Eli followed cautiously, the grass brushing his boots, his heart thundering with anticipation. He noticed that the ground where they walked seemed to sparkle faintly, as if the earth itself recognized their presence. They led him to a strange device at the edge of his farm, smooth, metallic, and covered with strange symbols that glowed faintly. Eli had never seen anything like it, yet the dragons seemed to understand it perfectly. One of them nudged it with a claw, and a holographic map appeared in the air, showing a world he could hardly comprehend. Rivers flowed like ribbons of light, forests floated in midair, and cities rose like crystalline towers. But the map also showed devastation. Dry patches, stormy regions, and areas covered in dark smoke. "This is our world," the dragon said. "We have lost balance. We cannot fix it alone. You can help us understand what to do." Eli took a step closer, feeling the warmth of the dragon's presence. The wind carried their scent, a mix of ozone, minerals, and something indescribably natural. He could feel their thoughts, not in words, but in emotion. Fear, hope, desperation, and yet, trust. He remembered the fields back home, the soil he had nurtured, the water he had channeled through canals, the crops he had coaxed from the ground. All of that knowledge, simple, practical, human knowledge, was suddenly not so small. Maybe he could help. "What do you need me to do?" he asked, trying to steady his voice. "First, learn," the dragon said. "Learn our ways. Learn our strengths. Only then can we combine them with yours. Then, we will journey together." Eli nodded slowly. "All right, I'll learn. I'll do my best." The dragons seemed to glow brighter at his words, a radiant light that lit up the fields like dawn breaking early. They spoke no more that night. But Eli felt their attention, their care, their unspoken encouragement. For the first time in his life, he felt part of something much larger than his small farm, something that stretched across the stars. That night, he could not sleep. He sat on his porch, staring at the stars, thinking about the dragons and their world. He thought about water, soil, crops, and cooperation. He thought about his own life and how simple solutions could sometimes create profound changes. And he thought, quietly, about hope. Perhaps he was just a farmer, but perhaps a farmer, too, could be a hero. As the night deepened, the dragons rested in the fields, their glowing bodies casting soft light across the wheat. Eli watched them, amazed at the sheer scale of their presence, and wondered how a man like him could ever make a difference. But somewhere deep down, he already knew. This was the beginning of something extraordinary. And nothing, not even the stars themselves, would ever be the same again. The morning sun rose slowly over Eli Darnell's farm, casting golden light across the fields. He had barely slept, thinking about the dragons and the strange world they had shown him the night before. His mind was full of questions. How could a farmer help an alien planet? What could he, a man used to soil and water, teach beings who could fly across stars and breathe fire? And yet, there was an excitement in his chest he had never felt before. By mid-morning, the dragons had gathered in the largest field behind Eli's barn. Their glowing scales reflected the sunlight, creating a rainbow of colors across the tall wheat. They moved gracefully, almost as if they were part of the wind itself. Eli stepped cautiously into the field, feeling the soft earth under his boots, and approached the closest dragon. "Are you ready, Humyn?" the dragon asked, its voice echoing gently in his mind. Eli nodded, swallowing hard. I think so," he said. "I want to help. I just don't know where to start." "Then start with learning," the dragon replied. "Observe us, understand us, and then we will learn from you." The dragons were more than he had imagined. Each one was unique, not just in color, but in the abilities they could use. One dragon, red and gold, could breathe small streams of fire, which curled harmlessly in the air and then vanished. Another, blue and silver, seemed to control water, raising droplets into tiny fountains and shaping them into floating patterns. A green dragon stirred the wind, creating miniature whirlwinds that danced around Eli. And a bronze dragon tapped the earth, making small plants sprout from the soil instantly. Eli watched carefully, taking mental notes. His life on the farm had taught him to notice small details. The way plants leaned toward the sun, how the soil changed after rain, how the wind could carry seeds long distances. He realized that these dragons, as powerful as they were, operated in ways that were natural, like the forces he already understood. Fire, water, wind, earth, they were just elements, tools of the world. "Do you see it?" the red dragon asked, its voice warm and calm. "Each of us has a strength. Together, we can create balance. But sometimes, we lack the understanding to combine them correctly. That is why you are here." Eli nodded. "Balance," he said aloud. "Like in farming. Water, soil, sunlight. Everything must work together, or nothing grows properly." The dragons shimmered in what Eli thought of as approval. He had never realized that his simple knowledge could matter to beings so magnificent. "We will teach you what we know," the blue dragon said, sending a small fountain of water to swirl around Eli. He jumped back, laughing nervously, and realized the water wasn't dangerous at all. It was almost playful, like a cat nudging his hand. "But we need patience. And we need you to try things you do not understand." Eli spent the day observing and learning. He watched the red dragon breathe controlled fire to help dry wet soil, a skill that reminded him of carefully burning old fields to prepare them for planting. The blue dragon raised water to irrigate dry patches, something Eli recognized from the canals he had built on his farm. The green dragon controlled wind to distribute seeds evenly, and the bronze dragon coaxed plants to grow faster in small test plots. By evening, Eli was exhausted but thrilled. He had learned that while the dragons were powerful, they sometimes missed the small, practical solutions humans relied on every day. He began to understand that his knowledge, careful observation, planning, and adaptation could fill the gaps the dragons could not see. "You understand us more quickly than we expected," said the red dragon. Hovering above a small pond Eli had used to test irrigation. "But you must learn to work with our strengths, not against them." Eli nodded. "I think I understand," he said. "It's not just about using your powers, it's about combining them in a way that makes sense, like how I rotate crops to keep the soil healthy, or how I know when to plant and when to wait." "Exactly," the blue dragon said. "We do not always see the long-term effects. Humans, you think ahead. You plan for seasons, for years. That is what we need." Over the next few days, Eli and the dragons experimented together. He showed them how to measure soil, how to test water quality, and how to observe small changes in plants that could indicate larger problems. The dragons, in turn, demonstrated ways to manipulate elements that Eli could never have imagined. At first, coordination was difficult. Fire could scorch what water was meant to nourish. Wind could scatter seeds too widely. But Eli persisted, patiently adjusting and teaching, learning to anticipate the dragon's movements and strengths. By the end of the week, a small test field behind the barn had transformed. Crops grew taller and healthier than ever before, nourished by the dragon's powers, but guided by Eli's careful planning. The sight amazed him. The dragons glowed with quiet pride, their voices humming through his mind like music. "You see," the green dragon said, creating a tiny whirlwind around a cluster of corn stalks. "When human ingenuity meets our abilities, the results are greater than either alone." Eli smiled. He felt a warmth in his chest, the kind that comes from knowing you are making a real difference. He had always loved his farm, but now he understood that his knowledge could reach far beyond it, perhaps even across the stars. That night, as he sat on his porch again, he thought about the dragon's home planet. The images from their device came to mind: glowing rivers, floating forests, crystal cities. He wondered how such a world could be in danger, and what role he might play in saving it. It felt impossible, yet he could not deny the feeling of purpose he had never known before. "You will need more than knowledge," the bronze dragon's voice echoed in his mind. "You will need courage, adaptability, and the willingness to try again after failure. You are learning these things already." Eli nodded, though he was alone on the porch. He thought about the challenges ahead, not just the dragon's planet, but understanding their ways, predicting outcomes, and creating solutions no one had ever imagined. And he realized something important. Fear was normal, but it would not stop him. He could learn. He could adapt. He could help. The dragons stayed with him through the week, resting in the fields and observing his routines. They were patient teachers and curious learners themselves. Eli began to notice small things: how they watched the wind, how they listened to the soil, how they reacted to changes in light and temperature. He started thinking about problems in layers, not just immediate solutions, but long-term effects. One morning, as Eli led a small exercise with the dragons, a small spark of fire escaped from the red dragon's nostrils and landed on a patch of dry grass. Instantly, Eli reacted, stamping it out and teaching the dragon how to control the heat more carefully. "Mistakes are part of learning," the red dragon said, its voice calm. "Do not fear them, human. You have shown patience. That is why you will succeed where others may fail." Eli laughed softly, brushing ash from his boots. "I think I can handle a few mistakes," he said, "especially if I get to learn with you." The dragons shimmered brighter, almost as if they were smiling. Eli realized something profound. He had never been alone in his work before, but now he had allies, unlike any he had imagined. Powerful allies, yes, but also partners who respected him, who needed his mind as much as he needed theirs. That night, after the dragons settled among the wheat, Eli stared at the stars. He thought about the challenges ahead, about the world beyond the horizon, and about the lessons he had learned so far. He had learned to observe carefully, to combine abilities, and to trust in human ingenuity. But most importantly, he had learned that no matter how small a person might feel, their ideas and efforts could matter in ways unimaginable. And somewhere, deep in the night, the dragons seemed to agree. The quiet of the farm no longer felt ordinary. It was alive, with possibility. The universe had reached out to him, and for the first time, Eli felt ready to reach back. Eli Darnell stood in the middle of his field, staring at the strange device the dragons had brought. It glowed softly under the early morning sun, humming with energy he could feel in his chest. The dragons moved around him, wings stretching, tails swishing, each of them pulsing with faint light. Today, they would begin the journey he had never imagined. He would take a journey not just across space, but across worlds. "Are you ready, human?" the red dragon asked, its golden eyes fixed on him. Eli swallowed hard. I think so, but I don't know what to expect. That is why we are here." the blue dragon said, water swirling around its claws like liquid crystal. To guide you, to learn with you, and to see how your mind works beyond this world. The dragons had explained as much as they could about their home planet, though the images they showed Eli were only a glimpse. Their world floated among the stars, a place of beauty and wonder, but also fragility. Rivers glowed like liquid lights, forests hovered on floating islands, and cities of crystal reflected starlight in dazzling patterns. Yet, there were cracks, signs of imbalance, patches of dry earth, erratic storms, forests dimmed by dying vegetation. The dragon's pleas were clear. They needed him to help restore balance. And quickly, the device in the field pulsed in response to Eli's touch. It had no buttons he could understand, no levers or switches. Instead, it responded to intent, to thought, and to feeling. With the dragons guiding him, Eli stepped onto the glowing circle etched into the grass. The dragons followed, their claws softly pressing on the device, their wings folding neatly against their sides. A sudden warmth surrounded him, like sunlight wrapping around his body. The grass beneath his feet shimmered, and a sensation of weightlessness filled his chest. Then, in an instant, the farm, the fields, and the distant tree line vanished. Stars stretched in ribbons of light around him, and he felt as if he were flying without moving. Eli gripped the edges of his shirt, heart racing. This is incredible," he whispered. "Hold steady," the red dragon said. Its voice was calm, reassuring. "The journey is safe. You will feel many things, but none will harm you." The stars twisted and bent around him, colors blending in ways no human eye had seen before. The sensation of movement was unlike anything he had ever experienced. No sound, no friction, only a gentle flow that carried him through the vast emptiness. The dragons hovered beside him, their forms radiant and familiar, and their presence gave him courage. After what felt like both seconds and hours, the sensation stopped. Eli opened his eyes and gasped. He stood on solid ground again. But the world around him was unlike anything he had ever imagined. He was on a floating platform of rock, green moss growing along the edges, and beneath him stretched a forest that glowed with soft bioluminescent light. Rivers of pale blue flowed between floating islands, and in the distance, crystal towers reached toward the sky. "This is our home," the blue dragon said, sending a small fountain of water to swirl above his hand. "It is beautiful, but it is fragile. Parts of it die every day. That is why you are here." Quote, Eli looked around in awe. He had seen deserts, mountains, and forests on Earth, but nothing like this. Everything seemed to float in balance, yet he could see signs of strain. Some islands tilted slightly, rivers dried in patches, and small fires flickered in places where forests were weak. It was a delicate ecosystem, unlike anything he had ever managed on his farm. "Where do we start?" Eli asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Observe first," the bronze dragon said, tapping the ground and making small plants sprout instantly. "Understand what needs balance. Then we will act." For the next several days, Eli explored the floating islands with the dragons. He climbed onto rock platforms with the green dragon riding the wind beside him, floated along rivers with the blue dragon, and carefully watched the red dragon breathe controlled fire to clear unhealthy vegetation. Everywhere he went, he noted patterns, measured problems, and began to plan solutions. He realized quickly that while the dragons had incredible powers, they sometimes lacked perspective. Fire could destroy areas that needed nurturing. Water could flood regions that needed stability. Wind could scatter seeds too far. And yet, when guided carefully, their abilities could amplify his knowledge in ways he had never imagined. "Your understanding of cause and effect is rare," the bronze dragon said one evening as the four of them rested on a floating island. You notice details we do not. You plan ahead, Humyn. That is why we chose you. Eli smiled, exhausted but proud. I never thought I would matter in a place like this, he said. I always thought my life on the farm was small. But now, maybe small things can make a big difference. You are learning, the red dragon said. And the planet will learn from you too. They began to work together in earnest. Eli devised systems to manage the water flowing between the islands, using canals and small barriers created by the bronze dragon's earth powers. The blue dragon controlled the rivers, keeping the flow steady. The green dragon distributed seeds carefully, ensuring that new plants took root without disrupting existing ecosystems. The red dragon cleared areas of dead vegetation, preparing the soil for growth. It was painstaking work. There were mistakes, rivers that overflowed, seeds that fell into wrong places, plants that failed to grow, but Eli persisted. He adapted, learning from each failure and teaching the dragons to adjust as well. Over time, they began to understand each other perfectly. Humans and dragons, working together, could restore areas that had seemed lost. One afternoon, Eli stood on a cliff overlooking a valley of floating forests. He could see the changes taking place. Rivers stabilizing, plants regaining strength, forests glowing brighter as the life returned. He felt a swell of pride. Look at that, he said to the dragons. We're making a difference. The dragons shimmered in response, their voices echoing in his mind like music. Yes, Humyn. Together, we can heal what was broken. But not all areas were simple. Some regions were badly damaged, with storms raging unpredictably and floating islands teetering dangerously. Eli studied them carefully, thinking about patterns he had learned on Earth. He remembered the way soil behaved, how water moved, and how small adjustments could create balance. Slowly, methodically, he began to apply those lessons to the dragon's world. Patience, the green dragon said as Eli directed water flows to stabilize a turbulent island. Your methods are slow, but they are steady. That is why they work. We Unis people. A bitter oat. Eli nodded, sweat on his brow but determination in his eyes. He felt alive in a way he never had on Earth. His mind raced with ideas, adjustments, and strategies. He realized that human ingenuity, combined with dragon abilities, could accomplish things neither species could do alone. At night, he lay on the soft moss of a floating island, looking up at alien stars that were brighter and more varied than anything on Earth. The dragons rested nearby, their warm, glowing bodies comforting and reassuring. Eli thought about how far he had come from a simple farmer to someone who could help save a world, and he understood that the journey had only just begun. Tomorrow, the red dragon said, we will begin the hardest work. Some areas of our world are unstable. They will test your mind, your courage, and your patience. But we will guide you. Eli sat up, heart pounding. I'm ready, he said. I don't know what will happen, but I'm ready to try. The dragons glowed softly, and Eli felt a strange sense of calm wash over him. For the first time, he understood something profound. It was not his strength, his fire, or his power that mattered. It was his mind, his ability to observe, adapt, and plan. It was human ingenuity, the quiet strength of someone willing to learn, to try again, and to keep going, no matter the obstacles. And as he drifted into sleep that night, floating among the glowing forests and rivers, Eli realized that he was not just a visitor in this alien world. He was a partner, a helper, a part of something greater than himself, something that could change the fate of a planet. The journey across worlds had begun, and Eli knew that the most challenging and most rewarding part was still ahead. The morning on the dragon's world began with a storm unlike anything Eli Darnell had ever seen. Dark clouds swirled across floating islands, lightning crackled in strange colors, and powerful winds threatened to topple small trees. Rivers had overflowed, and some of the bioluminescent forests trembled under the force of nature. Eli stood at the edge of a cliff, looking out over the chaos. The dragons hovered nearby, their glowing scales dimmed slightly by the storm. Eli could feel the raw energy of the world pressing against him, and for the first time since arriving, a flicker of doubt crossed his mind. Could a simple human really make a difference in a place like this? Do not doubt yourself, human, the red dragon said, its voice warm but firm. This is the test. The world itself challenges you, but your mind, your ingenuity, that is your strength. Eli took a deep breath, remembering everything he had learned since stepping onto this planet. Observation, patience, and careful planning had gotten him this far. Now, he would need more. Courage, quick thinking, and the ability to adapt in real time. The first challenge was a river that had flooded a small floating island, drowning the delicate plants and causing soil to wash away. Eli studied it carefully, noticing the way the water flowed, where the land was weakest, and how the current could be redirected without causing more damage. "We will assist," the blue dragon said, raising a swirl of water above its claws. Eli nodded, carefully guiding the flow of water, using small rock barriers and patches of earth that the bronze dragon raised with its powers. At first, the water surged unpredictably, washing away some of Eli's initial work. But he quickly adapted, adjusting the barriers and giving precise directions to the dragons. After hours of effort, the water slowed, settling into the proper channels. The island was stabilized, and the small plants Eli had protected began to rise above the water again. He wiped sweat from his brow and smiled. "That worked," he said. "We just have to pay attention and adjust as we go." "Indeed," the green dragon said, creating a gentle wind to dry the soil. "Your patience and observation are key. We have power, but you have guidance. Together, we succeed." No sooner had they stabilized the river than the next challenge appeared: a wildfire on a nearby floating forest. The red dragon wanted to help with its flames, but Eli quickly realized that burning the damaged trees could spread the fire further. He instructed the dragons to form a barrier of water and earth around the fire, while he used his knowledge of wind patterns to push the flames back into a controlled area. It was dangerous and delicate work. One wrong move could destroy more of the forest than it saved. Eli shouted instructions to the dragons, directing the water, wind, and fire in precise movements. They listened, adapting their powers as he guided them. Slowly, inch by inch, the fire diminished, and soon, the forest was safe. "Your mind thinks in ways we have never imagined," the red dragon said, breathing softly in relief. "You see cause and effect, predict outcomes, and adjust constantly. That is human ingenuity." Eli felt a sense of pride. But there was no time to rest. Across the floating islands, another problem emerged. A series of small storms moving unpredictably, threatening to tilt and separate the islands from one another. The wind whipped around them, making it hard for Eli to stand, and the floating islands shifted dangerously under their weight. "We cannot control all of it," the bronze dragon said, stamping its claws into the nearest island. "We need your plan." Eli looked around, thinking carefully. On Earth, he had learned to anticipate weather patterns, using wind direction, terrain, and plant behavior to predict storms. He realized that similar principles applied here, even on this alien world. He instructed the dragons to raise the earth under certain islands, creating anchors, while the green dragon used wind currents to counteract the storm's movement. It took hours, and several times Eli had to adjust his strategy mid-action as the storm shifted unpredictably. But slowly, the islands stabilized, their floating positions balanced like delicate scales. The dragon's light pulsed in approval, and Eli finally allowed himself a deep breath. "You have done well?" the red dragon said. "This is only part of what must be done. There are areas worse than these, tests of patience and creativity. But you are proving that humans are more capable than we imagined." Eli smiled, though he was exhausted. "I'm learning as much from you as you are from me," he admitted. "We just need to keep working together." The dragons shimmered in quiet agreement. Then, the blue dragon sent a wave of water toward Eli, forming a small pool. In its reflection, he saw the floating islands, the rivers, and the glowing forests, and he realized that, despite the damage, beauty remained. That gave him hope that the worst could be fixed with careful thinking and teamwork. Over the next few days, they tackled more complex problems. A collapsed bridge between two islands was rebuilt using a combination of dragon fire to fuse rock, bronze dragon earth manipulation to stabilize foundations, and Eli's planning to ensure the structure would hold. A patch of dying forest was revived by combining irrigation, wind distribution of seeds, and careful use of elemental heat to stimulate growth. Each success brought a new challenge. Some areas were resistant to repair, requiring multiple attempts and adjustments. Eli often had to think creatively, combining simple ideas from his farm with the dragon's elemental powers. Sometimes, what worked on Earth had to be adapted to alien conditions. For instance, floating islands required anchoring and weight distribution, something he had never encountered in his farming life. "Your ingenuity is remarkable," the bronze dragon said one evening as they rested on a cliff. "You are teaching us that thought and care are as powerful as raw strength. We may have wings, fire, and water, but without your mind, we cannot restore balance." Eli felt a warmth in his chest. He realized that this partnership, this collaboration, was what made their work effective. Alone, he could do little. The dragons could use their powers, but without guidance, they might cause more harm than good. Together, though, they could achieve something extraordinary. As they rested that night, Eli reflected on what he had learned. Human ingenuity was more than knowledge. It was creativity, adaptability, and perseverance. It was learning from mistakes, observing carefully, and making adjustments. And it was courage, the courage to try, even when the task seemed impossible. He knew the next challenges would be even greater. Some areas of the dragon's world were badly damaged, with unstable floating islands, erratic storms, and rivers that no dragon could fully control. But he also knew that he had grown, that he had learned to think beyond himself, and that together, humans and dragons could face anything. "Tomorrow," the red dragon said, its voice like a gentle drum in Eli's mind, "we will confront the most unstable regions. You will be tested as never before. But remember, your mind is your greatest tool. Trust it." Eli nodded, looking out over the glowing forests and flowing rivers. He felt a strange sense of calm amid the chaos. The work was hard, the challenges immense, but he had learned something essential. Humans could rise to any challenge, not through brute force, but through thought, care, and collaboration. The dragons curled around him, their glowing bodies warm and reassuring. Eli felt at home among them. Even on this alien world, he realized that home was not just a place. It was a feeling of purpose, connection, and trust. And he had found that here, among these magnificent beings, working to heal a world that had seemed beyond saving. The storm had tested them, and they had prevailed. The dragon's world was still fragile, still in need of care, but Eli knew that together, they could overcome even the most difficult trials. And as he drifted into sleep, listening to the hum of the floating forests and the soft glow of rivers beneath the stars, he felt ready to face whatever challenges came next. Because for the first time in his life, Eli Darnell understood the true meaning of human ingenuity and how it could change worlds. The final sunrise over the dragon's world brought a quiet determination. Eli Darnell stood on a floating island, watching the rivers shimmer in the early light. After days of observing, experimenting, and guiding the dragons, he could see the results of their combined work. Islands that had teetered dangerously were now stable. Forests that had been weak were glowing with life, and rivers flowed smoothly between the floating lands. Yet, the greatest challenges remained, a series of enormous storms that had plagued the northern islands for years, fueled by environmental imbalance. Today, the red dragon said, lowering its head to meet Eli's gaze, we will confront the most unstable regions. If we succeed, balance can return to our world. If not, the consequences are severe. Are you ready, Humyn? Eli nodded firmly. He was tired, yes, but he had grown into a sense of purpose he had never known. I'm ready, he said. We've come this far. Let's finish it. The dragons lifted him onto the red dragon's back, and they took flight toward the northern islands. Below, the storms churned violently, tossing small, floating islands like toys. Lightning arced in strange colors, striking rivers and creating dangerous whirlpools. But Eli did not falter. He had spent days studying the patterns, noting where wind currents collided, how the rivers shifted, and where islands were most vulnerable. Your understanding will guide us, the bronze dragon said, earth rippling beneath its claws. We will follow your directions. Eli began giving instructions, clear and precise. The green dragon blew controlled winds to stabilize floating islands, while the blue dragon channeled rivers into calmer flows. The red dragon breathed careful streams of fire, not to harm, but to warm areas where icy storms had frozen rivers. Eli adjusted constantly, shifting directions, predicting changes, and guiding the dragons in a precise dance. Hours passed. Storm after storm came at them, but Eli's mind worked tirelessly. He observed, adapted, and experimented, combining his practical knowledge with the dragon's abilities. When a small floating island began to tip dangerously, Eli instructed the bronze dragon to raise earth beneath it, while the green dragon pushed a wind countercurrent. The island steadied, and Eli felt a surge of triumph. You think in ways we cannot, the red dragon said through Eli's mind. Your ability to adapt to change, to anticipate results, is what makes this possible. The northern storms were relentless, but the teamwork between human and dragons was becoming seamless. Eli's voice carried across the mind link the dragons shared, directing flows, adjusting angles, and predicting movements. Even when lightning struck unexpectedly, they responded as one. Eli's human ingenuity and the dragon's elemental powers combined to create solutions that neither species could have achieved alone. As the day wore on, Eli noticed a pattern. The storms were strongest in areas where human-like observation and planning had not yet been applied. He divided the regions into manageable sections, prioritizing the most critical areas first. One by one, islands stabilized, rivers flowed correctly, and forests regained their glow. Eli felt a deep satisfaction, knowing that his careful planning was creating real change on a planetary scale. We have never seen our world restored so efficiently, the blue dragon said, lifting a swirl of water high into the air. Your mind sees possibilities we cannot. This is why humans are remarkable. By late afternoon, the northern islands were stable. The storms had dissipated, leaving behind a calm glow over rivers, forests, and floating cities. Eli stood atop a cliff, exhausted but exhilarated. The dragons hovered beside him, their glowing scales reflecting the soft light. He looked out over the transformed landscape and felt something he had never felt before. Pride, not just in himself, but in humanity. You have done more than guide us, the bronze dragon said. You have proven that humans can shape worlds, not with raw power, but with thought, creativity, and perseverance. You are a hero, Eli Darnell. Eli shook his head, smiling softly. I'm just a farmer, he said. I've learned from you. Together, we did it. That is exactly why humans are extraordinary, the Red Dragon said. You recognize cooperation, learning, and adaptability as strength. Power alone does not heal a world. Understanding does. As night fell, Eli and the dragons gathered in a large floating forest to reflect. They had restored balance, but the world still needed care, and the dragon's society would continue to work together with humans. Eli realized that his journey was not only about saving a planet, but also about building connections across species. You must return to your world, the blue dragon said, water flowing in delicate arcs around him. But know this: Earth and our planet are now linked. Your people, with ingenuity and care, can help when needed. You are our bridge. Eli nodded, feeling a mix of pride and longing. He had grown attached to this world, to the dragons, and to the sense of purpose he had never felt on his farm. But he knew it was time to go home. The dragons led him back to the device, and Eli stepped onto the glowing circle once more. The familiar sensation of weightlessness returned, and in moments, he was back on his farm. The sun was rising over the Terran frontier, painting his fields in gold. Everything seemed the same, yet Eli felt profoundly changed. The dragons remained nearby for a moment, their glowing forms hovering above the fields. Thank you, Humyn, the red dragon said. You have proven that even the simplest life can make extraordinary changes. Remember this, and remember us. Eli smiled. I won't forget, he said softly. And maybe one day, you'll visit again. With a final shimmer, the dragons ascended into the sky, glowing like distant stars as they disappeared into the horizon. Eli watched them go, feeling a deep sense of connection between Earth and their world. His life as a farmer would continue, but now it had purpose on a cosmic scale. In the weeks that followed, Eli applied what he had learned to his farm. He noticed patterns in the weather he hadn't before, planned irrigation with new precision, and even experimented with ways to restore soil more efficiently. Neighbors and friends noticed his methods improving yields. And though he never spoke of dragons or alien worlds, he carried the lessons with him. But the greatest change was in Eli himself. He had learned that ingenuity, creativity, and care were more powerful than he had imagined. Humans could shape their world, and perhaps even worlds beyond, through thought and collaboration. And he had experienced it firsthand. One evening, Eli stood on his porch, watching the stars. Somewhere out there, across unimaginable distance, the dragon's world shone brightly. He imagined them resting among the floating forests, rivers flowing gently, and islands balanced perfectly in the night. He felt pride, hope, and the quiet thrill of knowing that he had helped shape something extraordinary. We will call on humans again, the red dragon had said, and you will guide them as you guided us. You have shown that even one person can change the course of worlds. Eli smiled at the thought. One person, one mind, one life, could indeed make a difference. And if humanity could embrace that, perhaps the stars were not so far away after all. He turned to his fields, the wheat swaying gently in the wind. Life was simple, yet it was rich with possibility. Eli knew that his work, his care, and his ingenuity mattered not just for his farm, but for the wider universe. And that knowledge, more than anything, filled him with hope. The stars above twinkled, as if acknowledging him. And Eli Darnell felt, for the first time, that humanity truly belonged among them. The dragon's world was safe. Earth remained his home. And humanity, with its unique ingenuity, had proved that even ordinary people could accomplish extraordinary things. Eli took a deep breath, feeling the wind on his face and the soil beneath his boots. The universe was vast and full of challenges, but he knew that humans could rise to meet them. And somewhere far across the stars, a herd of alien dragons remembered the human who had changed their world.